All right, guys, Cody here. I had a few more questions come in, pretty easy ones, and I had a little bit of time, so thought I would get to these questions since I have taken some time since the last video or prior to the last video from posting again. So the three questions I'm going to get to: what degree should I get to make you more competitive in becoming a DS agent? I was asked to talk a little bit about the Marine security guards and the relationship between the special agents, DS special agents, and the Marine security guards, and then the differences between an embassy and a consulate. So, first thing, what degree should I get? You just need a bachelor's. You need a bachelor's from a reputable university. It could be an in-person degree. It can be an online degree. Just get a degree from a reputable university. Nationally accredited is good, but you need to have regionally accredited. I'm not going to get into the accreditations. Look up the difference between nationally and regionally and make sure yours meets both. All right. What degree you should get, it really doesn't matter. I got mine in international affairs just because I enjoyed it and I liked studying culture and history of some of these different nations. The key thing I hear, because I had fellow Marine security guards, I was also an MSG. I was an infantry Marine and then an MSG. And some of them wanted to join DS, but they never got the degree, right? So what I learned is that, hey, go get something that you enjoy, right? Something that you're going to take the time to finish and study and appreciate and enjoy as you go through the process, because it's not just easy to go get a 4-year degree, right? It really doesn't matter. You can have some that may be more helpful for you in the job, possibly a law degree. That's not 4 years. That's more than 4 years. That's what, 7? Possibly an accounting degree, which is 4 years. Those might be more helpful for you in the job, but it isn't going to necessarily make you more competitive in the interview. What's important in the interview is how good you are at the interview. What's also important is your work experience, because those interviews are going to ask you to talk about your experience. I mentioned this in another video about your experience in leadership and management and all these different types of areas. So degree doesn't matter. Just get a degree. Your grade point average does matter. It makes you a little bit more competitive. So you get your bachelor's in basket weaving and you get a 3.9. That's very good. That might get you a point or two higher, or it might contribute to, I don't know, something else that's positive. I remember I had a good GPA after the Marine Corps. I focused on school and I did well. And it made me more competitive, and I forget exactly why. But get a degree in what you enjoy, finish it, a degree that you can finish, and keep and work on it. Get a good GPA. That said, I know guys and girls that have bachelors that didn't do so well in college. So the GPA only is a minimal factor. But if you want to be the most competitive, I would argue to get a degree with a higher GPA. All right. Talk a little bit about Marine security guards and their relationship. So, Marine security guards protect U.S. embassies and consulates around the world. They've generally been assigned to most embassies and to some consulates. After the Benghazi attack, there was a mandate from Congress, and I'm going to kind of paraphrase, but there's a mandate from Congress saying that all these different embassies, every embassy and every consulate needs to be protected by Marines. And that's it. Even outposts like Benghazi was. Easier said than done, right? We had, when I was in Vietnam, I brought in the Marine detachment. There wasn't a Marine detachment at the U.S. consulate in Ho Chi Minh City. There was one in Hanoi. But because of this mandate, we had to bring them in. And we brought them in. Luckily, we had a setup with the local guard force, which is also part of our security in these embassies. And so it was easy for us to transition. All we really had to do was find housing, work out the logistics of getting weapons and all this shit, and get the detachment started. Other places, for example, don't even have a post or a place where you could put a Marine post 1 or housing, or it's too dangerous to have housing. Some places in Pakistan, for example, I remember some buddies going through that issue. So got a little off topic there, but basically, Marines are there to protect U.S. embassies and consulates, and I would argue that most U.S. embassies and consulates these days have them. I don't know, and I don't think that all U.S. embassies, consulates have them yet for whatever reasons. You'll learn when you become a DS agent, there's waivers for everything. You can submit a waiver and you get a freaking waiver, and you don't have to follow that guideline until, another time. So Marine security guards, they go through MSG school. I believe it's about an 8-week school. Back in the day when I went through, it was an 8-week school. You train on basically a little bit of everything, but you're basically law enforcement style tactics. You're trained to do CQB. You're trained on handcuffing and PPCT, pressure point control tactics is what they taught back then. I think now they're probably doing like MMA style stuff. The Marine Corps kind of switched to MAP, Marine Corps Martial Arts Program. They're trained in weapons of mass destruction. They're trained in response to a fire. They're trained in a number of things. That can help them, advance security at U.S. embassies and consulates. The premise behind it, back in the day when I went through, most of the Marines were combat arms guys. So you had your infantry guys. I was an infantry guy. You had your combat engineers. You had tankers. You had people that kind of trained in some type of combat arms. The Marine Corps, however, has this saying that says every Marine is a rifleman. So they go through MCT, which is Marine Combat Training, and so every Marine is a rifleman. Everybody can be an MSG as long as you qualify. So to qualify, they go through a number of steps. They go through MSG school, which is out in Quantico, Virginia, and now they have a place. It used to be called Marshall Hall. For those of you watching that are former MSGs, it's no longer Marshall Hall. Is another facility that represents a U.S. embassy. And they're trained there on all these different things I talked about. Everything from standing in a box in post 1 and pushing a fucking button and managing the closed circuit television to the more fun stuff like defending a compound defense, CQB, going after intruder. And these aren't your regular security guards that are in a place, like California where you observe and report. These guys are going to go. They're trained to go get people. So they'll go get an intruder. The RSO might say pull back. Locate, isolate, and contain is what we used to train on. So we would find an intruder and basically pin them into a corner as in a room, so we know where they are. Locate, isolate, contain, and then you would call, in some places, the locals, maybe a local SWAT team. Say you're in Germany, right? A very skilled and first world country that could come in and take them out. You may be in a place where you have no one but yourselves to go and find this human that is in there with a gun. I don't know. And so that would be a decision made by the regional security officer, who, as you know by now, is also a DS special agent. That's what they're called, overseas regional security officers. So the Marines are very well trained, 8 weeks. The reason for all the different style training, everything from compound defense to CQB, is because these Marines and you as a DS agent will be in these countries where you have no support. You have no ass, is what kind of we say, for a good 24 to 48 hours till a MU could potentially get a fast team to you. It's a Marine Expeditionary Unit to get a fastest foreign anti-terrorism security team or something like that. So they can get to you. So basically these Marines are trained up to withhold 24 to 48 hours, and they have the tools, the skill set, but also the tools in the armory to handle those types of situations. My advice as a former MSG and as a former RSO would be to go in there and listen to your Marines. You might have skills that you learned as an ARSO. I can tell you the Marines don't know much beyond what you do as an ARSO. I didn't know that DS special agents did crim. That they did. I knew they did protection, but they did criminal investigations and had all these liaisons. But Marines or any security unit that you manage are on the ground. They have a lot of info. They have a lot of intel, and I would say you treat them with respect. Stop by post 1, which is the post you're going to pass by every time you come into an embassy or consulate. You got to go by post 1. You got to get behind what's called the hard line. All embassy operations operate behind a hard line. Let me not say all, but most. Any classified operations operate behind a hard line. And you're going to go through post 1. If you're an RSO, you're a special agent, or assistant RSO, my recommendation would be to stop by post 1 and check out what's going on for the day. What happened in the last 24 hours? What happened overnight? Anything going on? And build that rapport with those Marines. Some RSOs do that. or assistant RSOs. Some don't. In these embassies, when you get to, especially your bigger embassies, you're going to have, or your medium-sized, you're going to have multiple portfolios. So you may not be responsible for the Marine Security Detachment. That may not be in your portfolio. You might be responsible for the local guard force and the surveillance detection team, right? And another ARSO may be responsible for background investigations and counterintelligence investigations. And another ARSO might be responsible for the Marine Security Guards and Weapons of Mass Destruction program. So keep that in mind. If you are in charge of the Marines, definitely stop by. That's all I'm saying. If you're not in charge of the Marines, you'll get a lot of kudos from the Marines. They'll like you. If the Marines like you, let me tell you, it's a big deal. It's hard to emphasize how important the Marines are at posts, because a post culture is oftentimes determined by the Marine detachment and how social the Marine detachment is. You may have heard this thing's called Marine house parties. Marines have their own Marine house, which is usually pretty fucking cool. It has booze, which they're limited now on serving the booze, and there's all kind of freaking rules and restrictions. But back in the day, we weren't. We were just having parties. It's a gathering place where people go. The Marines serve behind their bar. They collect that money and use it to provide a Marine Corps ball, which is in November, throughout November of each year. Marine Corps birthday is on November 10th. And so they'll use that money to fund their Marine Corps ball. And the Marine Corps ball is the big shit in country. Everybody wants to fucking go to it. Everybody gets dressed up, and it's a great fucking time. At least for you guys, for non-Marines. The Marines got to perform. And sometimes, these days, sometimes they have to work and they can't go to their own ball, which is a shame. So I'm kind of all over the place. If anybody wants a more strategic answer or response on talk about the Marines, then I'm happy to break it down, and I'll actually write notes. I'm just kind of talking on a whim here. But MSGs are important. The Marine Security Guard Detachment is one of the only active duty military detachments that is managed by a civilian. And that civilian could be you. So be fucking good to Marines. All right. Difference between an embassy and a consulate. An embassy is, because I talk about embassies and consulates, I use them interchangeably. They're not really interchangeable. But because they're different. But, you know, serving overseas, the DS agent, we get it. So an embassy is always in the capital city. I say always. Let me say this again. 99.9% time in a capital city. Why do I say that? Because in Israel, the embassy was in Tel Aviv previously. Tel Aviv is not Israel's capital city. It is now in Jerusalem, where Israel has their capital city. Tel Aviv is basically the business sector, the economic hub of Israel. So embassies are always in, but besides that one example, maybe one or two others, embassies are in capital cities of a country. Another example is the embassy in Hanoi, the consulate in Ho Chi Minh City, the embassy in London, and maybe consulates elsewhere. The embassy in Frankfurt, which is the capital of Germany, and consulates in Berlin and other places. Same thing with countries around the world. So that's how it works. The embassy is where the U.S. ambassador sits. The U.S. ambassador is a direct, direct appointee of the U.S. president. I talked a little bit the other day about political appointees, but there are two types. There's political appointees in which the president, whoever the president might be, is, appoints someone to be the ambassador, and they may not know shit about fucking foreign policy. And they may be great at their job, and they may fucking suck. And I've experienced, as an MSG, as an MSG, I experienced one guy that just plain sucked at his job. Other ambassadors are appointed by the president. They have to go through the same thing as a political appointee, but they're actually foreign service career foreign service officers. So they might have spent 20 or 30 years in the foreign service, and they are selected by whoever in the State Department to be put up to the president, and the president selects that guy. So your U.S. embassies are in capitals, and that's where your ambassador sits. That's what you consider the flagpole of that country, right? When we say the flagpole, it's like the headquarters. China, for example, has an embassy in Beijing and has a ton of other consulates. One in Shanghai, which is the economic hub, where there are a ton of Americans, and in other places in China. So consulates are a sub office of an embassy, and so a consulate, oftentimes, almost all times, if you're going to have a consulate, it's one in an economic hub of that country, or it's in a place where there are a ton of fucking Americans, right? So Shanghai, for example, economic hub of China, massive international business in that place, and a ton of freaking Americans. Same thing with Ho Chi Minh City. Ho Chi Minh City, economic hub, ton of Americans. So that's your difference between your consulates. At your consulate, it is a U.S. consul general, not appointed by the president. Still the president's representative in that part of the world, but really that consul general works for the ambassador, and they are promoted to a particular rank, and they're selected, and they go to post, and the consul general serves there. And that's who you, as an RSO, as an RSO at a consulate, you report to the consul general, and then you also, on the security side of the house, report up to the RSO, or the regional security officer in the capital or in the embassy. There are some other names, like, for example, in Taiwan, we have what's called an American Interest Section. That's only because Taiwan is not really designated as a country, or the U.S. and other countries don't recognize it as that, only because we want to maintain relations with China. But then we get into geopolitics and all that, and believe it or not, my country accent could talk about that all day. And I could be more specific if anyone is ever interested in something like that. But that's the difference between your embassies and consulates. And hope that's fucking helpful. All right. So thanks for listening. Follow me. I talked about my website the other day. Website is codyperron.com, CODYPERRON.com, where you can find all my social media. But I am on Instagram. I am on Facebook, agentsunknown_book. I'm also on Twitter, where we got a little bit going on. Have an audiobook out. It's doing pretty well. Check it out. If you're bored, listening, working in the yard, traveling to work, check it out. And also the book is still doing pretty well. Again, self-published. I write how I talk. Like it, good. Leave me a review. Be grateful. If you don't like it, probably don't have to leave a review. And too bad you don't like it. All right. Thanks for everything. I appreciate it. And I'm out.